Delayed obedience is disobedience. And we have been acting like we don't know, but it is. And I want to encourage us to get past whatever has been stopping us, whatever has made it challenging for us to follow through with the yes that we made. It's time for us to push through, push past that. Look, I got my push through shirt on. It's time to push through that because we are being disobedient. And it's only so much disobedience that God will tolerate. And I think we're at a place now where He is holding us accountable. He's given us time after time to get ourselves together, right? Because a lot of us have said yes. Like we're not saying, no, I ain't gonna do it. No, we've said yes. And a lot of us actually intend to do what it is that we are called to do, the things that God has gifted in us. But it's like, all right, I'm gonna do it. But we keep pushing it to the side. Life happens. We may be afraid. We may be thinking that we don't have what it takes. We may be experiencing imposter syndrome. We may be afraid of what people are going to say to us or about us. Because the piece of it is this. Our yes, when we give it, we don't always know what it's going to entail. And so when God begins to put things on our heart, right? So think of it from this perspective. The things that you are starting to notice and your heart is starting to be pulled towards, a lot of times those are the things, the very things that God has equipped you and called you for, to be an answer in that arena or in that space. So if you notice that you are up in arms about how people of color are being treated, or how our men, are being treated, which is kind of where my heart has been. A lot of times that is the very arena that you are called to go into, right? When you find that certain things are bothering you, a lot of times that is what God has equipped you to go. That's the environment that God has equipped you to go into and make those changes. We are the hands and the feet and the mouth of God. And He needs us to be in position. And it is time out for us continuously saying to Him, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. All right, I'm going to do it. But a lot of times it's, I'm going to do it when I get around to it. Because the reality is we are choosing to put other things ahead of what He's told us to do, right? And we're telling ourselves, okay, because the truth is this. Sometimes what we've agreed to do, we're not all the way quite certain, like, what is that supposed to look like? Or I think He told me to do it, but I don't really know. So we haven't invested the time to find out for sure. And the whole time God is like, but Scripture talks about in the fullness of time. And I've often read that and wondered, like, what does that mean? But a lot of times when you see that, and a lot that's in the King James Version when they talk about in the fullness of time. But I want you to think about it from this perspective. Like you bake a cake and you put that cake in the oven and you set it, right? And so at first, if you open it up, which you don't open up the oven, but if you do, and you look in or you turn the light on and you look in, you don't really see anything happening. The liquid is still there. It's just kind of laying flat. And maybe let's say 5 minutes later, you come back and you look and it still is laying flat. You're like, dang, like when is this cake going to be done? Whole time, what you don't see is that heat is working and doing some things on the inside. And when the fullness of time comes, meaning when those ingredients and the chemicals have mixed and the chemical reactions have taken place, not chemicals, but the ingredients have mixed and that heat has gotten to the right temperature, then it's time, then it's ready. Same thing that's happening now. In the fullness of time is when things will happen. So for a lot of us, we are saying, and this is going a little bit different, but I'm just going to go where this goes. We've been asking, I'm going to talk about me. I have been asking God, how long are you going to allow what is happening to people of color to continue to happen? And God is saying, in the fullness of time, I'm going to write some stuff. I am going to restore. I am going to recompense. I am going to reward. Justice is going to take place. But even in your personal lives, God is asking of you a thing. He has asked of you a thing. And for some of us, we have been like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get to it. That's what it's been like. We have been like, I'm going to get to it. And God has been patient. He has been very patient. Scripture teaches that God is long-suffering. He is patient. He is kind. And He is. But eventually, I want you to think about your child. Now, I keep telling you to clean this room up. I asked you to clean your room up. All right, Mama, all right, now I asked you to get this room clean. I got to keep asking you. And eventually, now I done asked you enough. That's for some of us who pop. And I'm laughing. It's so inappropriate. But understand that when we are asking our children to do something and repeatedly we're asking them and they're saying, okay, yes, they are agreeing that they're going to do it and they don't ever do it, that is disobedience. Same way we have agreed to do whatever God has put on our heart or whatever He has shown us to do, we have said yes. We're like, yes, I acquiesce. I am going to do it. And we won't ever do it. That is disobedience. And God is saying, I am requiring you to do what you said. I was reading in Daniel. Let me get my little journal. And I was reading in Daniel where the king had gotten puffed up. And he had gotten kind of like arrogant, like, I did this all on my own. I don't need anybody else. Like, my kingdom is built because of me. And the handwriting on the wall said, now I don't know exactly, mene tekel, I think is what it said. I can't remember exactly what it said. But basically, it said, like, you have been weighed in the balance. And you lacking. When we think and take inventory of our life and the requests that God has made of us, are we lacking? Are we, if we were to be put in the balance, are we lacking? It is really important for us to get back into right standing with God, meaning whatever we have agreed to do, that we do it. That we do not allow our fear of what could happen, what might happen, what are people going to say, how are they going to look at me, how are they going to treat me, because some of what God is asking us to do is going to take us out of our comfort zone It's going to require us to put on different roles, titles, hats. It's going to require us to be uncomfortable for a period of time. And that thought has been what has stopped some of us from moving forward. Some of us know exactly what God has called us to do, but we're like, I ain't ready for that just yet. Some of us have put family, relationships before money, before whatever it is that God has called you to do. Some of us are still battling with identity issues. We don't think we are good enough to do what God has called us to do. Some of us are still struggling with imposter syndrome and that whole idea, I was going to say ideology of I'm not good enough. That's exactly what it is. Imposter syndrome is an ideology rooted in I'm not good enough. I don't qualify. I'm not competent or capable. That's what that whole thing, that it is an ideology that I'm not good enough. And God is saying, yeah, I need you to come out of that and get into agreement with who I said you are and what I have called you to do. It's you all, this is marching orders. It is time. It is time. Whatever God has told you to do, it is time to get lined up. It is time to get in order and to get in place. You want to be found in position. You want to be found in position. I was reading in the scripture where it talks about the 5 wise virgins and the 5 foolish virgins. And that whole basis is that there were some that were ready and in place and prepared and well connected, right? Like they had their oil, they had what they needed. And then there were those that didn't. They kind of were like, they waited to the last minute to try to get in place and try to get what they needed. And God is saying, I've been giving you time. I've been giving you time. I've been asking. I've been knocking. I've been asking. And it's about to be fullness of time. And we may not have all the time we thinking we got, right? Because a lot of us, we just assume like, okay, if I go to bed tonight, I'm going to wake up tomorrow. And tomorrow, we make that assumption. You know how I know we make that assumption? Because we make plans for tomorrow. If you are making plans, that means you are assuming that you are going to be here. And that is not an assumption that we can make, especially these days with everything that's going on. The other piece of it is recognizing that at any point you can be removed. And not necessarily killed or anything like that, but think about what happened with Saul. He was anointed to be the king. He was who God said, I want you to be the king. You are going to be the king over Israel. And because of his disobedience, he was removed and someone else took his spot. I don't want to be removed. And I don't want nobody else taking my spot. And I don't know if any of y'all feel like that. But you can be removed, and the very thing that you set up, that you had created and you were looking forward to doing, God can take that from you and give it to someone else who is willing, who is obedient, who is agreeing to do what he has asked to be done. In the fullness of time, and I think we're getting to that place of the fullness of time, where God is ready to start making some major moves. And in these major moves, he is requiring players, individuals, people who are willing to go the distance. And not only willing to go the distance, right, with him and with his principles, with his ideology, with his mindset. And so when we are giving God our yes, it's us really agreeing to come out of covenant with us, with what I thought it was going to be like, what I thought it should be like, how I thought my life should turn, what I thought I should be doing by this time. Now, mind you, you keep hearing me say the word should. Anytime you hear should, you already know your thinking is probably flawed. As a therapist, one of the things I teach my clients is about cognitive distortions. And those are flawed ways of thinking. You may have heard it called stinking thinking, but it really is the ways that we're thinking that are off. So this whole idea of, well, I should be making this much money, or I should be XYZ, or they should treat me, or I should, you're already off. You're already off. So you probably want to challenge that thinking. But God is really asking us to release our shoulds. And the shoulds are expectations. Expectations that we have of ourselves. Shoot, expectations we have of God. Yeah, first off, I'm God. I'm sovereign. Don't come to me with your expectations. And not in a bad way. Like he probably don't talk like that. But at the same time, we see scripture says, I made you. Don't be coming to me talking about why you make me like this. Like, take it easy, sis, bruh. So us releasing our expectations, which oftentimes aren't realistic, the expectations that we have of ourselves, of others, of God, releasing that. It's also going to require us to release control. A lot of us struggle when it comes to being in places of vulnerability. And in order to be obedient to God, you have to be vulnerable. What I mean by that is submission requires vulnerability, because it's you saying, okay, I'm going to let you take the wheel. You're going to run the show. When you give control to someone else, there's the possibility that something could go not so good. So you are vulnerable. And very many of us have made inner vows where we've said, I ain't going to never be vulnerable or put myself in that position again, or allow myself to be in a weakened position. Because bad things happen. Maybe the last time you let go of control, something bad happened. So it makes sense that you would want to protect yourself, and that you would make that inner vow and say, nah, I ain't doing that again. And so now very many of us are fighting so hard to maintain control. And that's from what you eat, to who you date, to your spouse. You're trying to run the show. You're sabotaging things. You are finding it very hard to live peaceably with people, because you constantly are trying to maintain control. And when it comes to God, you ain't gonna be able to be in control, honey. And so there is work, there's inner healing that needs to be done, so that you can let go of the perceived control. Because the reality is you still ain't controlling nothing, right? Even though we feel like, yeah, I'm gonna be in control of this. Go to sleep. You don't get to control whether you wake up tomorrow or not, right? So we're still not in control. And we are putting a lot of energy and effort, and it's wearing us out. So many of us are tired, we're drained, because we are fighting to be in control. When you release that control to God, and you allow him to be in the seat, the driver's seat, it's a place of peace and rest, because now I don't got to try to figure out how this thing is going to turn out. I was a single mom. My daughter's an adult now, so I'm no longer a mother. But as a single mom, right? I'm kind of picking a little bit, but as a single mom, I had to be on it. I had to have plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. Y'all know how it is. And so we get so programmed of always having to put out fires, always being, going, thinking in your mind, planning. All right, I got to do this. All right, I got to run here. All right. What's my next step? Like, it drains you. And so when you get to this place, though, where you were able to say, okay, I'm going to let you be in control. God, I'm going to submit myself to you. I'm going to surrender. It's a place of rest because I don't got to try to figure this thing out. I can let him handle it. This ain't my thing. This ain't my show. So I ain't got to try to figure things out. And we can rest in that. So there is a peace that comes from being obedient, from allowing God to run the show. And so I want to kind of just end it there with encouraging you to think about your yes, what God is asking you to do, any areas you've been disobedient, meaning you've kind of slowed or not done it, or if you've been outright disobedient, like, yo, you better get it together. Come on back. But being willing. There's an ant on my camera. I was looking for him earlier. But being willing to obey. Put your pride to the side. Surrender. Make this commitment. Because at some point in time, it ain't going to be, okay, I'm going to do it. That's not going to cut it anymore. And that time is here. Time is now. So you have been encouraged. You've been warned. Like, let's get it going. Because people need whatever God is asking you to do. It's needed. People need your help, your thoughts, your words. Write that book. Start that job. Lend that money. Whatever it is that God is asking you to do, He's asking you to do it on purpose and in purpose. The time is now. I pray this is a blessing to you. Let's get on it.